What's up, Digidestins? Today we're going to try to predict the future. God, I couldn't even say predict. I am terrible at these things. But without a further ado, though, let's really get into this shit and actually get an understanding of what we might see for the top events of the first ever restriction event, which will be August 31st. And that will be for the none other than Niagara Fall Regionals. So the regionals I'm going to will have this restriction in place. So let's talk about some decks that are on the radar now. So if you guys know me, I am a king of playing cautiously, knowing that what we're going to be walking into, what to expect, what shenanigans we might face. First off, as you know, players instantly hear loop, and they're all flocking to that. I expect there's going to be a lot of loop decks walking into this, but just keep this as a friendly reminder. This is not an easy loop to pull off. This loop is an extremely difficult loop to pull off, in my opinion. Once it goes off, yeah, it's annoying as hell, but there's some things that you have to take in consideration. Majorly, keep your hand low. Mirage Guman here requires the max number of hand pieces. If you can keep your hand size down to 3 before the loop turn, they're not going to do anything. They're only going to gain 1 memory. They're not going to be able to extend the plays as how they want. It requires to have both Sio and Co, a Homer on board. So on play, you may play 1 level 3 Digimon from play cost from your Digivolutions without paying its cost. And then when you play a blue Digimon, by spending this tamer, you may place 1 blue level 4 or lower Digimon as a bottom Digievolution card. So this does require some setup, but once it goes, it goes. We kind of know this situation is kind of how it's going to be, but as you guys know, loop is always that Oonga Boonga scary word. You know, we have Lilith, we have Milith, but we had Lilymon loop where it was annoying to deal with, but at least by the end of it, you actually had a counter turn. This will definitely be on the course of people going like, well, now I can be the bad guy. I can make you skip your turn. Well, guys, don't always put your eggs in a basket, especially walking into this deck. I think it takes a lot of setup. This thing, yeah, it might go off once in the best of 3 you're going to do. If you get it off twice, you should be playing the lottery. I don't see this deck. This deck is definitely a best of 1 synergist mentality. Anything else past that, I would not be afraid. I think it's one of those decks similar to Jessamon, how it was. Really good to pull off the one trick pony once. If you asked it to do it 2 times, 3 times in the same, you know, for a best of 3 setup, the likelihood of you breaking past the first one is going to be a pain in the ass. Then you do have it Numon. Numon's another deck I don't know if I'm going to say we're going to see a mass amount of jump on. I think we're going to see a lot of people bailing on it, or a lot of people are just going to say, you know what, nothing's really changed much. I think the fact that we got the Louis hit plus the Uku hit means Emperors are a lot more scarier to this deck than it ever has been. And that is going to be a big contributor, especially once they digivolve into this Uku here. You're fucked if there's 2 Emperors on board. That thing's never coming up. You do not gain enough memory to sustain that card moving up ever. So stuff like that is something you need to continue to think going forwards. Is are players going to keep Emperor going, or is players going to remove them from their deck, thinking that the Ukumon threat is kind of shut down? To be honest with you, some players are going to value Emperor, some players aren't. Some players are going to just say, you know what, we're going to take out Emperor and just go, hiya, burn through you, you know, kind of situation. I think this is something you guys have to play accordingly to, and just be smart and aware. I think a lot of it changes. You're not going to do the same shenanigans. You have to play a little bit differently than you used to. And that's, I'm going to be straightforward with you. That's how I kind of see how this is going. You know, with Numon X Antibody at 1, Louis at 1 at Uku. There's 3 cards hit. This opens up a little bit more mixing and matching of what you want to do with the deck. And there's nothing wrong with that. but you have to know what you're doing when you walk into this. Then we do have Magnamon X Antibody Yellow Vaccine version. The Yellow Vaccine version, I don't think completely died from the list. It definitely slowed it down, and people that are really, hyper focused on getting that list and making it right and checking out who's naughty or nice, I think you're going to see a lot of players with hard commitments to this deck and still continuing with it. If not, you'll see a downtick. I expect there's going to be at least a lot going well. You know what? From this, probably I would say 45% might move down to like 40% players are on this now. That 5% kind of just falls off and switches over to the blue, which would move up blue armors a little bit better. But I think, with the Awakening of the Golden Digizord, and TK kind of hit, your consistency is a little bit weaker. So I feel like you're going to kind of go for like a Kari Shenanigans with Revelation of Light to kind of just fuel and try to get yourself going from there. And then we got Ancient Garuru. Ancient Garurumon's going to have two bases, I'm going to say. One's going to be blue base, one's going to be red base. Either or is going to go, but I don't know how to build the blue base personally, to be honest with you, but I think red base is still going to hold pretty decently. You're going to just play Mochomon and Gutsumon just to help kind of just speed turbo, trying to get your hand size decent enough so that when your Ancient Garu starts kind of just smacking your opponent in the face, it's going to do that. With both the Kojis, one's going to give jamming, one's going to give unblockable, and that's always scary for opponents. And having Emperor up is going to be vital. I think the fact that we are going to see this basically can't counteract Emperor anymore might slow down these decks a lot, because players might just hold on to the Emperor. As I was saying, Emperor is going to be that some players are going to say this card is still nuts going forwards, and then others are going to say it's mid at best. That is going to be up to the player, as I said, and at the end of the day, the deck's still going to do what it wants to do. I have no objections on how powerful this deck is still going to hold. Then we got 7 Great Demon Lords. I mean, yeah, a deck that doesn't give a flying rats if it plays Digimon Emperor or not. They could just play 4 Emperors and just make you have a bad day. They really don't care. This deck basically puts anybody on a clock. The only real bad matchups, I say, are decks that can just outspeed it and outpace it. And I mean, with Numon now kind of ticked down to slowing down a bit more, I expect this deck to see that repercussions and open up a little bit more. A lot of players might actually jump onto this deck, and that's kind of good, but be cautious and wary, because Imperial Dramon is a deck in the format. Many players might end up just putting Paladin mode in their list, and then you're screwed if that thing fucking hits the ground. I'm going to be straight honest with you. If that thing hits the ground, you're screwed. Like, there is nothing you can do. That thing will reset you, especially when you're ready to go Agudamon. If that thing hits down, it's going to wipe. It's going to make you have a bad day, because then you have to get Aguda back into that trash. And if you had 2 in there of your only 2, you're going to be sad afterwards. But all in all, just keep an eye out on what's coming forwards. I think this is going to be a very interesting format coming up. Then we do have Ancient Greymon. Ancient Greymon OTK is just going to be Ancient Greymon OTK. You know the drill here. They kind of just have a really good red lineup. I mean, I expect this deck to show up a little bit more, because players might actually kind of just go like, well, Ancient Garuru kind of got slowed down just a tad bit, not to my liking. Maybe Ancient Greymon might have potential, and that's what players are going to just try to balance out and think about. There's nothing wrong with trying to figure out where you want to stand in the format, so just keep an eye out on what you're expecting. Then we have Shine Greymon. I think Shine Greymon actually has a little bit more standing now. With a lot of the Uku Rushy Shenanigans kind of ticked down a little bit, it gives Shine actually a little bit more time to set up and breathe. And now they don't have to worry about Uku 1, Uku 2, Uku 3, Uku 4, Uku 5, Uku, all across the board. Now with that big speed demon kind of slowed down a little bit. I think Shine actually has a little bit more room to shine, as they say. But we'll have to see if the deck will actually do some crazy shenanigans. I expect it has some decent matchups. It's not a bad deck. You might want to go red egg base and just go straight for gas. That might be your preference, but we'll have to see what the end of the day resolves. Then we have Dexter Ruga. Dexter Ruga is still a fantastic deck. The deck didn't lose anything in its caliber. You know, with the Balmon situation, you're still having Balmons. So, I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. There's plenty of room to work with. I've been noticing players have been teching in Vikemon Ace as a, for its when Digivolving Blast Ace countermeasure, which I kind of get where they're going with it. I think it's just because sometimes they'll pop your Doro Gray, which will make you go into Dexter Ruga, and then you kind of can't go into the Daruga or Dexter Ruga that you kind of needed to at the time. So being able to go into Vikemon Ace as your Blast Digi-Evolution might actually help out in an extremely good caliber. So at the end of the day, it's going to be up to the player itself to decide what is good, what is bad, and what has a lot of potential. I like the Cool Boy tech. I think it's a really niche tech. We have like and again, I like Vikemon Ace as another option. You just can't use Rune Mode with it. But it's up to you how you want to handle this at the end of the day. It really does. I don't see anything wrong with this. The deck has a lot of good standings, and it really comes down to the pilot. A strong pilot on this versus a weak pilot will be seen by miles difference in gaps and talents. People that actually put the effort into this deck, you'll expect them to actually succeed. So definitely keep this on your radar. Then we have Takamaz GUI Fenry Luga. So this deck is another deck that centralizes about its trash. If Paladin mode goes off and screws you, you're screwed a little bit, especially if they can get your Kazuchimons at the very bottom. But that's why we play 4 of it, because you need to see it. But at the end of the day, the deck's going to do what it wants to do. I don't see any issues with this. I think major aspects, though, is that it does definitely want to use the Luga for the Doruga evolution shenanigans. If you can get double Emperor on this, that Luga is going to cry heavily at night because they have to Digivolve into the Darugamon in raising, and that's going to hurt them more than you understand. So that kind of just keep this on your radar. The deck has a lot of potential. Its OTK is very strong. But if it can be answered properly, you're in a bad spot. Then we have Mirage. Mirage didn't get it hit, so this means similar with Mirage Loop. Mirage is still going to do Mirage shenanigans. Mirage, how many times I'm going to say Mirage in this one sentence was crazy. I think I said it like 5 times, but this deck alone is still very powerful. There's nothing wrong with it. The deck is going to do what it wants to do, but smart players are going to play around this and just basically, trash their hand a bit. Make sure their hand size is a little bit down more. Nothing too crazy. As long as they can keep their hand size down when you're trying to gain a bunch of memory, you can counter crack back very easily on them. Then we do have Armor Magnamon X Antibody. The hit of the Golden Digizord was only played at 2 in this list, so it wasn't a big hit to the deck. So I expect this deck to actually still do fine coming format. I expect more players on it, to be honest, just because of how this works. You know, having Magna X be able to do Magna X shenanigans is going to be vital at any point in the game. Then we do have Imperial Dramon. Imperial Dramon didn't get hit by the list at all. I mean, it literally is playing the Hammer Sparks, but Demi. So, yeah, let's get the eggs here. But all in all, Imperial Dramon's still Imperial Dramon. There isn't anything that's lost in value. It has its Return of the Ancestors. It has the Davis and Kens. Emperor slows it down just a tad bit. But at the end of the day, looking at it now, the deck is still strong. It loses to itself, as always. The problem comes down to is, do I find my piece or did I not, kind of situation. And that's like the big thing, right? Then that is kind of everything I want to talk about, though. That's a lot of decks, though, to cover in this video, right? There's a lot of potential. The loop deck, Numon possibly having some shorter standings. I don't think the deck completely got killed by just hitting 3 cards. Magna X Yellow Vaccine version, I don't think it's completely dead. Ancient Guru red base might be dead. If not, they're switching to blue base and the deck's just more consistent. 7 Great Demon Lords, I don't see this deck going anywhere anytime soon. You have Ancient Greymon being Ancient Greymon. I think this has some potential. Shine Greymon definitely has a lot of value going forwards. Dexter Ruga is definitely going to do some shenanigans. You have Fenry, Luga, Takamaz GUI, you know the drill here. I don't know if it's going to do well in a long drawn-out tournament, but it's definitely good at the local level. Then you have Mirage Galga. You're just going to... Mirage is just Mirage. It's going to stay here until they hit it. You have, you know, blue armors, just doing blue armor things. Imperial Dramon being Imperial Dramon. So these are kind of the big things that we know that are going to be coming in, and I think there isn't going to be any surprises that we wouldn't expect. We could probably see Phoenixmon, we could see Valkyrie, we could see decks like that appear in the tops just because of the meta shifting. We'll just have to see if it's going to hold long term. So guys, hopefully you enjoyed the video. Hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll catch you next one. Peace.